Good evening, and welcome to the Crown Hill Journey. My name is Christina Apt. I'm an author, and you are about to share the story of a home that I lived in for 20 years. To give you a little background on this book, the house is a farm in Eden, New York. If you're not familiar with Western New York, Eden is a town about 20 to 25 miles south of Buffalo. And in 1979, my first husband and our young children were moving back to this area. We're from here originally, and my husband wanted to have horses, so we needed a farm. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, at the time, we did not get to buy that house. The deal didn't go through. But for the next 17 years, I became a house stalker. I would drive by this house. If there was no one outside, I would sit and park in front of it. I was so drawn to this house. I can't tell you why, but I just was. 17 years later, my husband and I are divorcing, and I get the horses in the deal, so I need a farm. Through the power of the universe, God's plan, pick your ideal, this farm in Eden is back on the market. And in the 17 years it had belonged to a commune, and while they loved the property dearly, it was an expensive property to keep up and a little beyond their means. So the house needed a lot of work, and as a result, I could afford it. So in 1995, I moved in, 3,400 square foot house, 14-acre farm with outbuildings and a big barn, and I had a bed and a dresser. But the house and I were connected from the very moment I ever walked through it in 1979, and I was thrilled to be able to return and live there and know what life was like to live there. About 2 years after I moved in, I'm sorry, I have a hair that keeps going in my mouth. About 2 years after I moved in, I started getting anonymous letters, phone calls, people stopping me on the street in town, telling me about things that had happened to people who actually lived in this house that caused it to be known as the haunted house on the hill. Something I knew nothing about. From there, I started doing research, talking to more people, and eventually came to writing the book Crown Hill, a historical novel of love, life, and the afterlife. You will meet people who actually lived in this house in this book. You will also meet people that are out of my imagination. But most importantly, you will meet Crown Hill. That house became real to me, became an entity in my life, guided me for the 20 years that I lived there in ways that I really can't explain, but if you've ever lived in a house that you love, you will understand what I'm talking about. So the house was so real to me that when I sat down to write this book, I felt very strongly that it needed to have a voice in telling its own story. So at the end of each chapter, the house comes in and advances the story. It is the narrator of this book. So I have never done anything like this before, reading different voices, so hopefully I can do this in a manner that will entertain you. I want to thank you for joining me. I know that this is a challenging time, and that's one of the reasons I decided to do this. I had lots of people asking me to do it, so it seemed like a good time. Know that I've never done anything technically like this either, so if it's not exactly perfect tonight, hang in with me. We will make adjustments and get better. I want to thank Mark Odian, my friend Mark Odian, for helping me get this organized as well as it is, and know that I won't always look like this. Some nights we'll do it in our PJs, but for this first night, I'm thrilled to be doing this, and I'm honored that you're joining me. So I'm going to have a sip of wine, and then we're going to get started. Sorry, I have to have a flashlight and it just went away, so hang in with me a minute. I can't read without this flashlight because I've set the mood for you so it's nice and dark. So hang on a second. Turn on the flashlight. Turn on the flashlight. There we go. Now I can read. So this evening, this book is divided into 3 sections. Well, 4 really. There's a prologue, and then there is book 1. And book 1 is exactly 1 chapter, and that's what we're going to read tonight, the prologue in book 1. And in book 1, you are going to meet Mary. And Mary will follow us through the entire book. Her name is Mary Southwick. Her husband's name is Owen. These are two people who actually lived. Mary was a resident of Brant, and Owen was from North Collins, New York, both rural farming communities. They were there in the 1860s, 1850s, and they lived at Crown Hill in the 1860s. And I think that's probably plenty that I need to tell you. I'm going to start with the prologue, and the prologue is the house, is the voice of Crown Hill, so you know. 150 years. Oh, let me put my glasses on, that would help, right? Sorry. 150 years, evolving from a one-room shed into a groundskeeper's residence, a treasured summer retreat, a holistic commune, a cherished family dwelling. 150 years, hosting family celebrations, birthday gatherings, births, deaths, wakes, weddings, salons, and seances. 150 years of time when no matter who sought my shelter, no matter the changes they wrought, a part of me was always extraordinary. Stop for a minute. Stay quiet and still. Feel the tranquility and calm, the sense of welcome in my walls. It is that quietude that has long drawn departed spirits into me as a haven, a trusted refuge. For the most part, the souls who have lingered within me have been kind, harboring no desire to harm. Rather, they have been in search of the needed strength to journey from this world to the next. Yet there was once a spirit, a tortured soul, whom even my healing powers could not aid. This spirit was the essence of a gentle woman who once lived within me, a woman who created a loving atmosphere unlike any I had ever known. Accordingly, we became closely entwined in ways that can only be shared between a homemaker and her home. Sadly, and to my enduring sorrow, fate delivered a wretchedly violent end to this woman's life. It was a death that inextricably wounded her soul, leaving her unable to find peace even within my shelter. Thus, this woman's tortured spirit remained within me for years, haunted and haunting, searching for release from the earthly ties that kept her connected to her agonizing demise. The situation was painful for us both, and over time became unbearable. That is, until the power and wisdom of the universe interceded in the form of a heartfelt woman who helped us both to once again become whole. It is our story that I share with you in the here and now. Book 1, Mary. I'm taking a set. Everybody's here. I'm hoping you can hear and that you can see all right. Chapter 1, June 3rd, 1884. Mary Southwick carefully navigated the narrow rungs of the wooden ladder, pausing as she became level with the upper pantry cupboards. In one balanced motion, the determined woman grabbed hold of the nearest cupboard handle and gave it a strong tug. Once, twice, 3 times. Suddenly, the glass door sprung open with unexpected ease, causing Mary's hand to ricochet squarely into her nose. The sharp blow caused an immediate welling in the farm woman's eyes. Truth be told, she'd been on the verge of tears all morning. Sadness was a pattern in Mary's life that had long ago wearied her, and one she desperately wanted to end. Yet for the last 18 years, Mary possessed little power over her tears, or anything else in her life, ever since taking the vows of marriage with Owen Southwick. The thought of her husband caused Mary to reach up and tenderly touch her cheek. She could still feel the trace of Owen's oversized palm, a vestige of his early morning fury. Mary's day had started peacefully enough. She rose from the iron-frame bed she shared with Owen and dressed in the cloak of morning darkness. Silently, she slipped downstairs into the parlor to steal a few moments in this, her favorite room. Snuggled into her grandmother's heirloom rocker, Alongside the piano that she loved to play, the gentle farm wife allowed herself the indulgence of reading in the quiet comfort of her Crown Hill home. Mary held a strong passion for books. Over the years, they provided a blessed escape from the isolation of her life with Owen. On this morning, in the pattern of her passion, the gentlewoman became quickly lost in the wonder of a book written by Englishman William Robinson. His expertise on cottage gardens entranced the devoted gardener, and time passed without her realization. So it was that Owen's appearance above her seated body felt like a bolt of lightning, sending shocks throughout her being. In a blinding flash, the incensed husband ripped the book from Mary's hands and began an assault of demands for his breakfast. Owen's rage quickly morphed to the physical as he snatched his wife from the rocking chair. The lithe woman felt the twist of every bone in her body within the force of the angry man's grasp. Propelling her into the kitchen, Owen whipped Mary around and forcibly drew their bodies together. With his dank breath suffocating her own, Owen pronounced that he would return shortly for his breakfast, and it had best be on the table when he did. To reinforce his demand, Owen added a stinging slap across his wife's cheek before shoving her towards the stove and storming away. Turning to the task at hand, Mary spoke a soft plea of desperation. "Dear house, help me. Please help me find the strength to endure, to withstand this life." It was a habit the solitary farm wife had developed over the years, sharing her sorrows with the home she loved so deeply. Shortly after becoming husband and wife, Orrin's nature turned dark and foreboding. It was a change his mother connected to the other men in his family who had exhibited the same abusive tendencies as they aged. No matter the cause, Owen began mistreating Mary out of his own anger and against her kind heart. Many a morning she was left bereft as Owen departed for the fields, threatening to burn her treasured books if her various household demands were not done upon his return. His spiteful threats were almost always accompanied by a shove or a well-placed strike. Climbing down the ladder in the pantry, the distressed farm wife felt a familiar, sick panic spread through her every sense. How was she ever going to prepare the fresh bread that Owen expected upon his return from the fields? Oh, wait, I skipped a whole page. I'm sorry. Let me go back. It's live! Okay. With no recourse, I'm sorry. So let me go back and lead you into that sentence. I apologize. We'll get better at this. His spiteful threats almost always accompanied by a shove or a well-placed strike. With no recourse, Mary learned to transform the pain of Owen's abuse into heartfelt devotion to her home, giving all of herself to filling it with loving touches and comforts inside and out. As if to personify her love, Mary christened her home Crown Hill, a name she felt reflected the wonder of this special place, set atop one of the area's highest rises. Each time Owen became abusive to her mind or her body, Mary turned to her home for the sense of comfort and care found nowhere else in her life. Drawing on that bond, Mary tucked away her fear and all feelings of loathing, both of Owen and of herself, and focused on her husband's breakfast. Unsure of how quickly he would reappear, she kept the morning meal simple: a sliced steak and fried potatoes from the previous day's roast ham dinner, scrambled eggs from the bounty she had collected in the henhouse the morning before. As for bread, she knew the wisest choice would be to serve toast. It was the only way Mary could imagine avoiding Owen's wrath, by not having freshly baked bread prepared. Owen had always been a demanding man, especially when it came to his meals. Breakfast was to be on the table at 6 a.m., dinner exactly at noon, and supper at 5 p.m. sharp. No variations, no excuses. Additionally, no matter the food Mary cooked, Owen had long ago decreed that bread was to be baked fresh every day. Plating Owen's breakfast, Mary silently admitted that after almost 2 decades of marriage, she had grown weary of her husband's regimented meal demands. Just once, she thought, It would be nice to eat a bowl of soup at noontime rather than a heavy meal of meat and potatoes. A simple sandwich at night instead of a 3-course supper. Of course, the harried farm wife knew there was no sense in broaching such menu variations with her husband. Unless she was willing to be punished with days of silence, or worse yet, a cuff across the face, Mary needed to continue her practice pattern of meal-making exactly as Owen fancied. To her relief, when Owen returned for breakfast that morning, he took no issue with the toasted form of his bread. However, as Mary sat silently at the table amidst the tenuous calm, she knew her reprieve was short-lived. It would be but a few hours before Owen would return for his noon meal with the full expectation of fresh-from-the-oven bread. It was that reality which led Mary to her post-breakfast struggle with the pantry cupboard door. Putting aside the sting of her burning nose, the petite woman began rummaging through the pantry cupboard, pushing aside crocks of flour and sugar, shuffling containers of baking soda and salt. With extended effort, Mary reached into the back recesses of the deep cabinet. There she located a glass canning jar filled with carefully wrapped packets of herbs and spices, all of which she had lovingly grown and dried. From her earliest memories, Mary had loved gardening. As a young child, squeezing clumps of earth through her chubby fingers. As a youth, discovering the magic of bringing seeds to life. As an adult, becoming expert at propagating herbs and into unusual combinations for her hearty stews and tempting desserts. Yet at the moment, Mary was not the least concerned about her precious herbs. Rather, she was on a frantic hunt for baking powder. She began the search in her oversized country kitchen, scavenging through cupboard after cupboard without success. In frustration, the steadfast housewife turned to her pantry, holding out faint hope that she might have misplaced some of the leavening agent within her herb jar. Sifting through its contents, Mary softly inventoried: peppermint sage, lemon thyme, chive parsley, sweet mother of pearl, no baking powder. Exasperated, Mary returned the circular glass lid to the canning jar and forced the wire keeper onto the notched ridge. Shoving the container back among the canisters and crocks, she soundly slammed shut the cupboard door. Climbing down the ladder, the distressed farm wife felt a familiar sick panic spreading through her every sense. How was she ever going to prepare the fresh bread that Owen expected upon his return from the fields? Hitching horse to wagon and driving to Caskey's General Store in the nearby town of Eden would require time that she did not have. Panicked, Mary could imagine no other option than to prepare for Owen's looming wrath. Suddenly, in the midst of her dread, came blessed inspiration. She could walk to the Sandrock's house, a half-mile down the road. No doubt her neighbor, Elizabeth Sandrock, would have extra baking powder that she could borrow. Mary grabbed her bonnet from the hall tree and whisked out the back screen door. Passing beneath the rose-covered arch that defined Crown Hill's entry, Mary paused for a deep breath and a view of her surrounding gardens. The floral scents and sights soothed the troubled woman's mind. The Southwicks had moved to the farm upon marrying in December of 1866. Owen had gifted the 50-acre property to his bride in a gesture noted by Mary and many around them as devoted and loving. However, the truth of the matter was, Owen was financially unstable. He hadn't the money to afford even the down payment for the rambling farmhouse with its outbuildings and acreage. As Mary later learned during one of her husband's brooding rants, it was Owen's father, Richard, who actually purchased the property. He entered into the transaction based on his son's promise to repay the debt. Yet Owen's word meant little to him, as evidenced by the fact that in 18 years' time he had reimbursed his father less than 1,000 of the original $5,000 purchase price. For her part, Mary was devoted to her father-in-law and grateful that he never made mention of the monies owed him, at least not to her. Mary was sure that Richard recognized the dark side of his son's nature and surmised the indignities that she suffered as Owen's wife. Mary believed that her deep love of Crown Hill soothed any guilt Richard Southwick suffered over his son's part in their clearly troubled marriage. So it was on this sunny June morning that Mary once again took strength from the beauty of her home, her gardens, and her favorite rose-covered archway. With a sense of renewal, she tied her bonnet in place and set off down the road. Within minutes, Mary was winding her way along the driveway to the main house of the Sandrock estate. The Georgian-style residence appeared as a grand white mansion, more gracious than any of the nearby homes. Frederick Sandrock owned the property. He was a widower who generously shared the house with his brother William, William's wife Elizabeth, and their 3 children. From the day that the Sandrocks and the Southwicks officially became neighbors, Mary and Elizabeth had bonded over their mutual love of gardening. Mary was reminded of their shared passion as she approached the Sandrocks' backyard. Walking beneath the wisteria-laden arbor gate, Mary paused for a moment to enjoy Elizabeth's beautifully landscaped brick terrace, to luxuriate in the scents of the perfectly groomed perennials embellishing the house entryway. The setting was a gardener's dream. It was mere seconds, however, before Mary's peaceful reverie was shattered by boisterous laughter spilling from the house. Mary immediately identified the ruckus as the Sandrock children. Mary envied Elizabeth's motherhood. It had been her life's dream to produce a brood of children to nurture and love. However, she and Owen had never conceived. Mary still winced whenever she recalled the memory of Doc Shaw scribbling the word barren across her medical chart. She remained incensed that Doc had denounced her body as the barrier to conceiving a child. She was equally frustrated that the small-town physician had shared that decree with Owen. Within her own heart and soul, Mary was convinced that it was Owen, not she, who had been unable to create life within her womb. Never mind. Mary steeled herself against the ever-lurking melancholy. None of that matters right now. Concentrate on the task at hand. Mary approached and knocked on the Sandrock's door several times. No response. Stepping inside to the back hall of the kitchen, Mary called out, "Hello?" Again, no response. Just as she was about to give up and retreat, Mary felt the thunder of the Sandrock children flying down the back stairs. The voice of their nanny, Bridget, followed close behind, pleading, "Now all you just simmer down." Mary braced herself for the onslaught as the children raced through the kitchen, barreled over her body, and slammed out the back door. Seconds later, Bridget appeared flustered and winded. Upon seeing Mary, the overwhelmed nanny politely nodded and began apologizing. "Oh, Mrs. Southwick, I'm so sorry, Mum. I really had no idea you were standing there. I was just trying to chase the children outside to blow some of the stink off them." With no time to waste, Mary proceeded directly. "Bridget, I'm sorry to ask, but it seems that I've run out of baking powder, and I have to get bread into the oven right away. Might you have some I could borrow until I can make the trip to Caskey's tomorrow?" With a nod and of course, Mrs., Bridget lumbered off to the pantry. Moments later, the helpful servant returned with a small container of the leavening agent and a respectful, "Here you be, Mum." Mary expressed her thanks and asked Bridget to deliver her kind regards to Mrs. Sandrock. The ruddy-faced nanny offered to summon her mistress, but Mary politely declined, explaining that she really needed to attend to her baking. But then, before departing, Mary paused. "Bridget, please do tell Mrs. Sandrock that with this extra baking powder, I'll make one of my special cinnamon nutmeg coffee cakes. If she likes, I could bring it over tomorrow, and we could begin planning our new perennial gardens." In the weeks that followed, Bridget endlessly repeated that snippet of conversation to all who would listen. As on the very next day, rather than sharing cake and planning gardens, Mary Southwick was found hanging from a rafter in the woodshed behind her beloved home. Yeast encrusting her stiffened hands, flour dusting a ghastly pallor across her bruised and twisted face. So that is the first book of Crown Hill about Mary. I will tell you Mary and Owen Southwick are real characters. The Sandrock Road is true. The Sandrock House is true. Much of what you're going to hear in this book are real places and people. And I will do my best to clarify that for you because I do think it adds to the enjoyment. From here on in, it'll be one chapter a night. The chapters will range from 10 to 15 pages, so it'll be an investment of time. I understand you won't always have that time, so please know that all these will be kept on my Facebook page where you are tonight, and every night for the next 29 nights we will read another chapter, and by the end of April we will finish this book. There is a way to get your own copy of Crown Hill. I put it up in front of my face. You won't get the book like this, but you can get a download of it. And the way you get that is to go online and type in Christina Apt, my name, .com, hashtag, not a backslash, but hashtag GA for giveaway. If you do that and click on it, you will be taken to a page where it says, want your own copy of Crown Hill? Give us your email. I promise you your email will only come to me. It will be totally safe, and the only thing you will ever get for it is a free copy of Crown Hill and an occasional newsletter about what's going on in my writer's world. Once you do that, you will then click and you'll have a blank white page in front of you, and you'll think, wow, what did she do? She forgot to give me the book. No, that's just the first of 298 pages. You're going to have the actual manuscript, the Crown Hill manuscript. So you can keep it and scroll through it on your computer. You can download it. You can print it, whatever you like. And if you are going to join me, you might want to follow along yourself, and you can catch me if I don't read exactly as it's written. So thank you for joining me tonight. This is a thrill for me. I promise you I won't be as nervous as I am tonight, and we'll get better at this. There's a lot of characters. I'm not exactly sure how I'll make their voices happen, but I'll do my best. And I don't know. Thank you. This means a lot to me. Crown Hill is a place very close to my heart, and I think by the time we're done, you will feel the same way. So welcome to the Crown Hill Journey. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night at 7:30. I'm Christina Apt.